Episode 30, and we're doing a complete DeFi project evaluation on Cardano. Hey, and welcome to the Learn Cardano podcast, the podcast where we break down all the ins and outs of Cardano so you know what projects are coming up next, so you can jump in there and get in early. Yeah, that's right. We're doing a complete breakdown of all of the DeFi projects and doing a project evaluation, a real look into exactly where things are at and giving them a score. I'm your host, Peter Buey, and I am here to guide you through this entire process so you can work out what is the best project that you might want to jump in on. Now, if you want all the notes and references for this podcast episode, you can check it out in the show notes down below, and you can click on there and you can go straight to the website at cardano.com.au/EP030. Yes, we're already up to episode 30, which is amazing. We're punching through them one at a time, and we'll get to 100 before we even know it. So there is a lot to get through this episode, so let's get straight into it. Okay, so to start this process, we probably need to know exactly where the Cardano landscape is at the moment before we can actually start diving in and breaking down all these projects. So first off, a lot of these DeFi projects have not launched yet. Smart contracts have only just launched in September. The current date is October at the moment. And what all of these projects are waiting for is extra levels of integration that are needed to be able to talk to the blockchain. So one of them, the main one, is the Plutus application backend. So this is a layer of code, a layer of software essentially that developers need to be able to deploy their smart contracts and interact with them more easily. So this is what all the DEXs or the DeFi protocols are waiting for at the moment to be able to get onto the blockchain and be able to release various products. So it is supposed to be releasing sometime at the end of October, maybe early November. So we'll just have to wait and see exactly when that happens. Now, when that does happen, we'll start to see some of the projects launch on testnet. We have already seen a few projects give a little demo and show video showcases of exactly what's happening. And they're live interactive ones that they've done and recorded, and you can see that it's interacting with the blockchain itself. So the connecting Web3 wallets and doing transactions and swaps that way. So it's really cool to actually see this starting to happen, but we know that it isn't fully integrated just yet on mainnet. So we're just waiting for a little bit longer for this to happen. So before this happened, it's probably really good to know what is going on with all of the projects out there and trying to determine which ones to start looking more into. And this is what we've come up with. So this is a project evaluation framework. So it's based off some other work that we've referenced in the show notes, and you can see the framework that we've put together that scores all these projects based on certain metrics and certain criteria that we've pieced together. So let me just break this down for you, and then you can have an idea of where we're coming from. So first off, we do a project analysis. So we have a look at various metrics around the project itself to see if it fulfills the sort of need. So first off, we look for a white paper. Is there a white paper? Has something been written about the project in particular? And then we look at the degree of complexity and detail that is put within that white paper. Some of these white papers that come out are a couple of pages long. Some of them are very detailed, 30 plus pages, and it goes through every single complexity of their mathematical sums for their AMMs and so forth. So it gets quite complex, and we score all of the projects based on their white paper and the details that they're giving out for all of the users. Then we look at their competition. Is there a lot of competition for what they're trying to launch? For example, there are a lot of DEXs trying to launch right now. And there's a couple of DeFi protocols that are launching as well. So we're looking at the competition. Technically, there is no competition at the moment. They're all just developing DEXs, racing for that finish line and trying to get there smoothly. But they are all there and jumping in. So we look at the competition. Next, we look at the value. What are they bringing to the Cardano ecosystem? So are they providing more useful utility? Are they providing DeFi protocols? Are they providing the DEXs? Some of these these systems that people are used to on other blockchains, what else are they bringing to the table in regards to value? Then we start looking at the roadmaps. What is their digital landscape? What are they building? When they're building? When are they planning to deliver things? And when they're planning to launch various aspects of that particular product that they're doing? So we're looking at their roadmap in general. Now, the next major metric that we're looking at is the community. So a lot of these projects, if you look at Shiba Inu or Dogecoin, they have huge, massive communities. Not so much in terms of the development or anything else around that. Really good marketing, though. And they have these communities that drive the adoption and drive the price up of these various coins. So it's very important to have a look at the community aspects of these particular projects. So we look at their online presence, how well is the website put together, their social networks that they're engaging on. Are they on a couple of social networks? Are they one or two? Are they appearing on Clubhouse? Are they doing Twitter Spaces? Are they on TikTok even? TikTok is huge. This is where Doge grew and exploded after Elon Musk tweeted out a couple of things, and then it took off on Twitter with these Finfluencers. So if you haven't checked it out, I'll put a link in the show notes to the TikTok, Twitter influencers for fintech, and it's quite interesting. You be your own judge. Let me know what you think. Then we look at the communication of these projects. Are they a black box where they don't really communicate, or do they freely communicate with the community on these various social networks and do email campaigns, etc., etc.? So what's the communication like? I also look at advisors. Have they engaged various advisors to push them and guide them through the blockchain development process of whatever they're building? Have they engaged with big names in the industry, such as Satoshi Nakamoto, maybe these join their project, whatever advisors there may be. And last, within the community side of things, influencers. Have they engaged influencers, YouTubers, those Finfluencers, and who are they talking to? Are they shilling things like BitConnect, or are they doing really cool 1-minute videos on TikTok? So what is their influence like? Next metric I look at is traction. So where is the development going? Have they released anything? Is there an MVP? Is there a working product or anything? A lot of these dexes don't at the moment. Some do have a couple of demos, but not any release code. So it's a matter of evaluating what's available at the moment. I think that I've only touched one MVP, and that's DeFi. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. We also look at the partnerships. So in terms of traction, how many partners have these projects teamed up with? So these partnerships form more adoption. So some of the partners that these projects link up with are already existing. They have lots of users, and announcing these partnerships and working out what the partnerships are can determine how well involved or integrated this project may be in the future. So we look at partnerships. It's a very important thing. The next we look at is the code itself. Have they delivered any code? Has the developers of those teams delivered any code in the past as well? So we look at what their history on GitHub is, for example. Is there a little bit of code? Is there a lot of code? Are there any working demos? Can we fork the project? And then from then, we actually look at another major metric, which is the developers itself. So later on in the software development lifecycle, when things are open source and released onto the market, we will see more developers on GitHub play around with the code that has been delivered by these projects. So at the moment, there isn't anything released. Everyone's keeping everything tight-knit and not sharing anything at the moment. So if you look at all these projects' GitHub repos, they're pretty much empty, or they only have a landing page repo for their website or whatever it might be. So we do look at eventually, and when these projects evolve, we'll be looking at their GitHub repos, looking at their activity, looking at what developers are interacting with. Are there a handful of commits? Have other developers done pull requests or done proposals, improvement proposals to try and improve the project? So we look also at the developer engagement, see if there's a lot of commits on there. Are the developers pretty much doing nothing, or is it a really active project? Next, we look at their technical knowledge. So a lot of these developers, they may be front-end developers and they're just doing a little bit of CSS and JavaScript. But for a novice that's looking at the code, they wouldn't understand that. So if you're not a coder and you're looking at the GitHub repos and you're seeing thousands of commits and thousands of entries, you think, wow, that's amazing. But if it's just basic HTML and CSS, my sister can do that. My little baby sister can do that. So it's not really a big deal. But if they're committing Solidity code and then converting that over to Haskell and then writing a Plutus layer on top of that and doing a lot of command line interface stuff with the Cardano CLI, I know a lot of you had no idea what I just said there. But if they're doing a lot of things like that and we're looking at the code and they're doing some cool things, yeah, okay, great. So we know that they have a decent level of technical knowledge. Next, we look at the trading capabilities of their token, if they have a token. So we look at, like I said, if they actually have a token, what the token is for, the general tokenomics, who is holding onto the token, and we give that a rating as well. Next, we look at the exchange listings. If the token is actually listed on exchange, is it accessible? Can users buy and trade it as whatever it may be? The next major metric we look at is their network or their network effect. We look at things such as search trends on Google Trends to see how many people are actually searching for these particular projects. And when I did this analysis, it's quite interesting to compare all the different projects. The hardest one to compare was Meld, because Meld is an actual search term already to meld something together. So it was extremely hard to compare that because the word meld was up everywhere and could mean many other things. But in the regards to the other projects, they were easy to compare. So it's interesting to pull up the stats and have a look at that particular metric. Next, we looked at the Twitter mentions, how much activity there is on Twitter, people talking about it. And then we also look at the project's Twitter followers, how many Twitter followers they have, and the quality of their Twitter followers. That's quite important as well. And I'll show you and explain about what you need to look for in a Twitter follower that may be a scam. So we'll talk about that later as well. Then I also compare that with the Reddit followers as well. So if these projects have Reddit subreddits, some of these have a couple of hundred followers, some of them have tens of thousands of followers on Reddit. So it's really important to have a look at all of these, combine them all together and give them a rating and a score too. Now, the last one is very key and core to what I think Cardano is all about, and this is transparency. So a lot of Cardano enthusiasts don't want to be rug pulled, don't want to be scammed by various projects. So in the early days, a lot of the developers that are building these projects didn't want to be known. Crypto Nitties, for example, when that came out in 2017, 2018, no one really knew who the developers were. So it was at a website where you could buy these crypto kitties, and I couldn't see any idea of who the developers were at a first glance. I'm pretty sure by now, the developers may be known and they have GitHub repos all over the place, but I don't know. And a lot of the team members now, when they're building projects, people ask who they are. Have they revealed themselves? So that team transparency, have they been doxed, is really important. So for a lot of the Cardano enthusiasts, we want to know who we're working with and who we're throwing our valuable assets to make sure that the team won't run away. We want someone accountable for the project. Next, I look at team participation. So has this team been involved in other projects in the Cardano ecosystem or other ecosystems for that matter? Have they delivered anything else for the Cardano ecosystem, like open source projects, little tiny tools or whatever it might be? And when I say little tiny tools, I mean something like Nami Wallet, where Alessandra is contributing an entire wallet infrastructure for the Cardano ecosystem, or NFT Maker Pro, who's built a business, Patrick Tobler, who's built an entire business around minting NFTs. So, they're not exactly tiny projects, but they've contributed something big. So if either of those guys were participating in a new project, I would rate this one quite highly. And then lastly, the last and very last thing I look at is the team experience. So all these people may not have contributed something to the Cardano ecosystem before or other blockchains, but have delivered some really serious projects elsewhere. So we do look at that experience of the various team members to try and work out how well versed these people are in delivering web and digital projects. So that's something else we look at. So that's my general framework that I've been using to evaluate all of the projects, all the DeFi projects on Cardano at the moment. And let's get into actually evaluating a bunch of them. So I have a list of 10 or 11 projects here, and let me just read out the names for you. We have Cardax Pro, we have Adana, Cardax, DeFi, Liquid Finance, Maladex, Meld, MintSwap, Merkur, SundaySwap, and Vive Finance. Now, to actually get through all of these in a podcast episode, I actually won't get through all of these in a podcast episode. So I've just picked out 4 of them. I'll go through Cardax Pro, Cardax, Meld, and Vive Finance. And I'll be breaking it down via this scoring system that I set in place for this project evaluation framework. And from there, you'll be able to see which one is working out best out of those 4. But if you want to know more about the other projects that I mentioned as well, and I'll be adding more and more to this particular framework, you can check them all out in the show notes at cardano.com.au/EP030. I've set up a section on the website where it goes through all these project evaluations, and each time I will go through them and update them over time as projects are releasing more and more information. So first on my list is Cardax Pro, and I wanted to go over this one in particular because a lot of people think it's a scam. So it's probably worth looking at this one, breaking it down and working out, is it a scam or is it not a scam? Is it a legitimate project, etc., etc. Okay, so let's have a look at the product evaluation itself. They do have a white paper and it is fairly easy to understand. It's about 13 so pages long. It goes through all the tokenomics, or the breakdown of what they're trying to build and the problems that they're trying to solve. So a lot of this is just basic DEX itself, which all really makes sense. So in this case, I'll give it a 3 in terms of rating for the white paper. In terms of competition, I'll also give this, a 2. Mainly because they're just a DEX. They're just trying to provide that DEX level interaction and interface and functionality, and nothing really else around it. So I do believe they do have other things planned. They have mentioned it, but as a core product that they're trying to release, it's just a DEX. Now, the value that they're bringing to the ecosystem, this is a little bit interesting because one of the features that they did want to do was an Ethereum bridge and bridge things over from Ethereum over to Cardano. So there may be that DEX element that is bridging over, but it doesn't seem like that is going to happen anytime soon, mainly because the bridge components, the ERC20 token bridge that IOG keep on talking about, hasn't really raised its head, and we don't really know where that is going. And I really believe that from my understanding, that's one of the key features that they're looking at in regards to bringing some features over. So in terms of value, I'll give that a 2. Now, the roadmap is very clear on the website and what they're trying to do and when they're trying to achieve it, and there are updates along the way. So I'll give that a 2 for the moment as well. Now, their online presence, this is huge. They are essentially everywhere, and they have a huge online presence in terms of their website. So their website is very well up to date. It is very clear and explains everything that you need to know about the project. Their social media channels are absolutely epic. So online presence, I'll give that a 3. Their social channels, I'll give that a 3 as well. If you jump on Twitter or in their Telegram chat, they're very vocal, and their community is very vocal as well. There are a lot of Cardax Pro fans on there, so check out their socials. It's quite interesting to see so many people talking about the project. So it's all there. Their communication is quite high. You see Dovidas, the chief marketing officer, on Telegram almost every single hour of the day. I don't know how he can do it, but I guess it is all a part of the marketing efforts. So he is there and he's communicating, and they do a lot of blog posts and Medium articles to talk about the project itself. So I give that a 3 for communication. Now, in terms of their advisors, they've managed to team up with Mate Toke, who is a big name in the Bitcoin.com space. So he was one of the early founders of that particular project and is very well known in the Bitcoin community. They also have David Windman, who is a big investor and has a startup called Rolling Cryptos. So they're two really big names that they have going for them in terms of advisors. So I give that a big 3 as well. Now, in terms of influencers and people that they have engaged quite a few YouTubers online. So if you type in ADDX Pro on YouTube, you'll be able to see a whole bunch of different interviews, including one from ourselves, and you can get an idea of how many people that they've engaged that way. So I give them a 3 for that as well. Now, in terms of traction, their development, partnerships, and code. Development, I would have to give it a 1 because I haven't seen any code, same with many of the other projects. Now, in terms of partnerships, they have announced quite a few partnerships and you can find them all on their website. I'll give them a 2 for that. Now, last, in terms of code, I'm going to have to give that a 1 as well because, again, like all the other projects, there is no code released at the moment, so we can't see any of the code yet. So the next metric group is the developers itself. Again, no GitHub repos, no developer engagement at the moment either. And in terms of their developer knowledge, they may be behind the 8 ball compared to some of the other teams, but it seems like they're catching up at the moment. They've engaged with an auditing team to look over their code, which means there is some level of reassurance that they've gone through the process and built in what they need to build to make the DEX actually work. So they're engaged with BT blocks for their security reviews to find out exactly how the DEX that they're building is looking and how it's going to be integrated into the ecosystem in general. Now, when I did look into BT blocks, I can't tell what projects they have worked on in terms of doing audits. It's probably something they may want to hide. And I can't tell if they have Haskell experience to be able to look at the Plutus smart contracts and what has been happening there. So it's a little vague in regards to some of those details, but it seems like they are going down the audit process and are having their code looked at. So it's, I guess, still early days. And when we actually see some of the code released, maybe see some of the code released on their GitHub repos, we can have a better analysis for this. Now, in terms of their skills and their dev team, I know that they are primarily Ethereum or Solidity-based developers. That's from the interview that I did earlier with Dovidas. You can check that out. But he mentioned that they're primarily working in the ETH space and transitioning over to the Cardano blockchain. So there may have been a lot of upskilling required, a lot of retraining all of the engineers or a team of the engineers to learn Plutus smart contracts and learn Haskell as well. It isn't clear how they're doing that, how they're progressing. So it's I have to give this one a 2 for technical knowledge. I know they do have experience in delivering blockchain projects and writing the Ethereum-based projects, but I don't know anything about their Haskell experience. And from what I can see with their engagement with their partners and whatnot, I don't know if that is very clear either. But we'll see what comes out of this space soon. Next, their token and trading. They have launched a token. It is available for purchase, and they do have an exchange listing. It's not listed on all sorts of different exchanges, mainly because the other exchanges out there don't support Cardano native tokens just yet. But they do have their own exchange. I think it was called X Markets. That's right, it was called X Markets. I believe the development team that built X Markets are also the dev team that are working on ADDX Pro, from what I understand. So that is the link there, and if you just happen to have an exchange, it kind of is handy, and that's where the ADDX Pro is coming from. So they get a 3 for their token because it is widely out there. They did their ICO in the very early days on an Ethereum, and they brought in a lot of liquidity that way, a lot of excited people to jump onto Cardano. It is trading on exchange as well, so I give them 2 points there. So total for 5 points for the trading section. Now, in terms of their network effect, this is good. If you search for ADDX Pro and look at the trends and compare it to the other projects, they are by far the highest search project on the Cardano ecosystem. So ADDX Pro, I give them a full 3 points. Twitter mentions, again, also compared to some of these other projects on Twitter, it's very high. So again, I'll give Twitter mentions a 3. Now their Twitter and Reddit followers, this again is very high, and I'll give them a 3 as well. Now there is some caveats there. In the very early days of ADDX Pro, I think they may have engaged a Twitter marketing company, and you could see a lot of the followers that are on their particular accounts look like giveaway Twitter bots. So this is something that a lot of projects do just to get that first boost of followers. And when, usually for a Twitter follower, for a Twitter user, I should say, when you see an account that has over a few thousand followers, it looks like something you should be following. So it's a good boost, and a lot of people use that marketing technique to try and build up followers. And I believe this is, again, my opinion, something that they may have engaged in the early days. A lot of projects do this. Now, the last metric section here is the transparency level. In terms of knowing the entire team, they do have LinkedIn profiles. You can look them up. You can see what they are doing. I was told that they have a large team of developers, but we don't know who these developers are. I don't think that's too important. The main factor there was that they wanted Dovidus to be the main visual face of the company and of the project, and that is what he's doing. So he's essentially the shield, the wall between the community and the actual developers itself. Now, being a developer myself, I don't like always engaging with customers and talking to people in regards to all sorts of things. I rather just be working and building things myself. So it's totally understandable from that perspective. So transparency, I'll give them a 2. If their entire team was completely transparent, it'll be a 3, but I'll give them a 2 just because they have some level of transparency there. Now, in terms of participation in the Cardano ecosystem and what they've contributed back, I don't think I've seen anything in regards to that. So at the moment, I'll give them a 1. In terms of experience of delivering projects, crypto projects in particular, I'm going to give them a 3 because of their link to X markets and what they've delivered there, or the tokens or the projects that they're delivering there in general. They do have a team that know what they're doing when it comes to delivering crypto projects, and they've done it before. They've done it on Ethereum for many years. I believe it's 4 or 5 years that that company owner there has been working in the crypto space. So it's probably a good evaluation to give it a 3 score system. So let's add up all these numbers and work out exactly what ADDX Pro score is. And with a quick punch of the calculator, its total score is 51 out of 69, with the minimum score of being 23. So it's scoring quite well there in terms of this evaluation. So let's move on to our next project. The next project we have on the list here is Cardax. So Cardax was the first announced exchange that was going to be built on the Cardano ecosystem, and they did a Catalyst proposal around it and were successful. And I believe that was in Fund 4 of Project Catalyst. So they managed to get through that. They got a little bit of funding there and they started the project, which is absolutely fantastic. So let's have a look at the product in general. The product white paper, they have a clear white paper. It's easy to understand, and it drew in a lot of followers in the early days. So I'll give this white paper a decent 3 because of the accessible language and the detail that it gave. In terms of competition, I'll give this a 2 as well, mainly because DEXs there are quite a few DEXs in the Cardano ecosystem being built right now. In terms of value, I'm going to give this a 2 as well. It's a decentralized exchange. They are doing something a little bit different in their automated market maker, and they're doing an extended automated market maker to try and bring in some of the features from a centralized exchange, such as buy-sell orders. I believe that's what they're trying to do. Roadmap is clear and easy to understand as well, so I'll give that a 3 in terms of roadmap. And in terms of delivery, we can't really say that they've delivered anything yet. because it's not possible to deliver anything. Now, for their next metrics here, the online community, they have a really good online presence. Their website is very clean. Their social metric is good as well. They have a huge amount of Twitter followers and a really big Discord following as well. So there's a lot of, I think there's 10,000 people on Discord and 20,000 on Twitter. So their social profiles are very big, very active, and especially being the first announced DEX on the Cardano ecosystem, they had that first mover advantage. Communication is very clear and very clean. Ryan Morrison does a weekly update in regards to the project, and it's on YouTube every single week. There is clear communication through the actual portal itself, on Discord, on their social media channels. So it's really easy to talk to the team and talk to Ryan even to find out what's going with the project. Advisors. They haven't really engaged with any clear advisors that have worked in the blockchain space before, not like Addix Pro had. So advisors, I'm giving it a 1. In terms of influencers and third-party engagement, I'm going to give that a 3. They ran a campaign a little while back, and they reached out, engaged with a lot of different YouTubers and a lot of different media places, and managed to get out there quite well. So in terms of influence engagement, I'm giving that a 3. Now, in terms of traction, the traction for the development, there again, like all the projects, there's no GitHub repos at the moment, but it's going to be interesting in terms of their technical knowledge. So we'll talk about it in a moment. In terms of partnership, there are a few partnerships that have been announced, and they are partnering up with other DEXs and other projects. So I'm giving that a 2. In terms of code, I'm giving this a 1, unfortunately, because just like all the other projects, there is no code out just at the moment. The next part here, the developers that are part of the project. Now, recently, they teamed up with their auditors. So their Plutus developers that were working on the project were going through and developing what they needed to do, and they came out of the Plutus Pioneer program. So earlier this year, they were freshly trained up Haskell developers and Plutus developers with a bit of experience, but they didn't have the experience needed to deliver this, I think. So they were going through it, and each time they did an audit, they had to go back and change little things here and there. So Ryan engaged with the company Well Typed, who were doing their audits, and said, hey, why don't you just build this alongside us and build it with us? So they've engaged them to actually build their project for them. So that is a big advantage. That is bringing years of Haskell development knowledge into the Cardax program. So we should be seeing something very well polished and very well built for Cardax, which I am very excited to hear. So in terms of developer engagement, I'll give that a 1 because I haven't got anything out there yet. Again, with their GitHub repos, I don't have anything available. But in terms of technical knowledge, I give them a big 3. That is because they are working with Well Typed. Now, their token that they have that Cardax token, and they did do an ICO to raise funds to pay for this team that was coming on board. So they did an initial token offering, but they did it in a interesting way. You had to have a minimum amount of ADA to be able to participate in the token sale. I believe it was 5,000 ADA from the top of my head, and that actually limited a lot of people from being able to get into the ecosystem. So the small players that were wanting to invest, they wouldn't be able to at that point in time. It was the larger players that had more ADA to spare, such as the larger whales that could get in and buy up a lot of the Cardax tokens at that early stage. So unfortunately, it wasn't all the way at the bottom or to the top. It was mostly the middle layer of people that had the ability to get in, and the whales. So I'm giving that a 2 in terms of the token distribution. They do have a token, it has been distributed, but probably a little bit more centralized than you would want it to be. They don't have an exchange listing yet because it has nowhere to be listed. So I'm giving that a 1 for now. Now, in terms of their network effect and how they appear, Google Trends is quite average in terms of Cardax searches. For a lot of people aren't looking for Cardax in particular. They may be typing in decentralized exchange or DeFi Cardano, but not specifically Cardax. So their name isn't very well known in the search sphere yet. So I'm giving that a 1. Twitter mentions. If you type in Cardax on Twitter, you do see quite a lot of them, and they have a huge Twitter following and a small Reddit following. So in terms of Twitter mentions, I will give that a 2, and their Twitter following and Reddit following, because they have such a huge following on Twitter, I'll give that a 3. Team transparency. So transparency in general for their team, I'm giving that a good 3, because Ryan is on their AMAs, their weekly updates every single week talking about the project. They have their developers that went through the Plus Pioneer program available on the Discord chats, and people would have known them while they were doing their training as well. So transparency, I'll give that a 3. In terms of participation, I'm giving this a 3 as well. And this is because they went through the Project Catalyst proposal process. So to go through that, it does take a while. People tend to read over your proposals, engage with you, communicate with you to work out who you are. And to go through that process and do it anonymous, no one will listen to you. No one will trust your proposal. So the fact that they went through and actually won the funding for it, it's a clear indicator that their participation and being a part of the Cardano ecosystem is big. So I'll give that a 3. The last one here, their experience. Now, I'll have to give this a 2, mainly because of their, in terms, actually, no, I'm going to give this a 3. I forgot that they were teamed up with Well Typed. Originally, if they didn't have Well Typed teamed in there, I would have given them a 2 because of their lack of Haskell development and their Plus development. So the core dev team at the moment went through and did what they could, but were coming up with hurdles to get through that last bit of the audit until Well Typed came in. And now that Well Typed have come in, they can go through and complete the project and get another large company to audit them. So it's good to see that happen. So I'm going to give their level of transparency the full marks there for transparency, participation, and experience. So let's have a look at the score here and see exactly what Cardax gets. And punching in the numbers here, Cardax gets a total score of 50 out of 63. The next project on the list here is Meld. So Meld's a DeFi loan provider for anyone that doesn't want to sell their crypto assets and wants to be able to utilize it and spend it by taking out loans on the Meld protocol. So you'll be able to take out a loan, lock up your crypto assets into a smart contract, let that accumulate in value, let it pay off itself with their smart loans, and eventually get your crypto assets back and pay off your loan. So Meld is a very interesting project. So let's go through and give it a score. So the product evaluation overall, white paper, fantastic. It's a very detailed, very long, very well put together document. If you really want to pull something apart, Meld's document and white paper is something to more than bedtime reading. It's quite a lot to go through. I'll give that a 3. In terms of competition, there isn't much competition in terms of liquidity providers, DeFi loan providers on the Cardano ecosystem at the moment. There's only 1 or 2 other ones out there that is doing something very similar. And they have a gold-backed stable coin, which they are looking into putting together. So it's something quite big that they're putting out there. So in terms of competition, I'm giving them a 3. In terms of the value proposition that they bring to the ecosystem, again, a 3. They're doing stuff that isn't available on any ecosystem out there that's or not readily available the way that they want to do it. So I'm giving them a 3. In terms of the roadmap, I'm giving this a 3 as well. They have a very clear outline of what they're trying to achieve, and they are hitting their goals in terms of their marketing, their plans, and their ISPO, which is almost at the end, and eventually they'll be I think shutting down those pools, maybe keeping one still, but keeping them and distributing all the Meld tokens closer to the end of the year. So in terms of the roadmap and what they're trying to deliver and what they're trying to do at the moment, it is a clear 3 as well. In terms of their online community, their presence online, definite 3. Their website is very slick, very well put together. Their socials are very well done as well. So all their social channels are beaming with people. Telegram, their Discord, their Twitter account as well. It's all there. They also have a Meld ambassador program, which has recruited a bunch of influencers to talk about Meld and promote their information as well. So they get a lot of access to the information and be able to ask questions so that they can distribute that information to the rest of the community. So it's a really cool thing that they have going on there. So communication is very high. Now, in terms of advisors, their advisors are quite a few there as well. So there are a lot of people that are experienced and have been in the crypto space for a long time. You can check out their website to see all their advisors. So I did have a look over that, and that gets a big 3 as well. In terms of influencers, they have been on, I think, every single YouTuber's channel that I can think of. If you know of a YouTuber, it's probably there. I don't think he's been on BitBoy Crypto's channel, but every other Cardano YouTuber out there that Ken Oling has been on, and you can watch the interview that I did with Ken Oling as well for the Meld project. In terms of traction for the project, there again isn't much code or any code available at the moment. So in terms of development traction, I give that a 0 at the moment. They have developed some tools for their ISPO and have done some things around that. So there is a little bit of development, but nothing specific to the project that we can see that is available online. Their partnerships, though, on the other hand, are huge. Every single week there is a new partnership with someone else, and it's incredible to see. And I guess with the amount of ADA that they're pulling in at the moment, they can actually form these partnerships. So the more money you have, the more partnerships you can form. And with these partnerships, we'll be seeing a lot of concrete development that is building into what Meld is offering as a product, and then offering it to the rest of the ecosystem around there and everyone else that they're partnering with. So that is very highly ranked. If I could give this more than a score of 3, I probably would. Now, code, there is no code at the moment again, so that is a big fat 1, like every other Cardano project at the moment. Now, their GitHub repos are fairly quiet. They do have their developers on there on a couple of projects, but if you look at their GitHub repos, they're quite inactive, quite small at the moment. Hopefully, because that is just, it's all hidden and you can't see any of the projects that they're working on. Developer engagement is low as well. There aren't any developers. There is no code to play with, so developers aren't doing pull requests or improvement proposals. So there's nothing in terms of developer engagement. Their technical knowledge, though, is quite interesting. Their lead developer, Hai, is semi-anonymous. He's always on Telegram, but you never see him on Twitter, mainly because he hates Twitter. But you can see him on Telegram talking to a lot of the community there, and the things that he explains, the articles that he writes, really shows the depth of knowledge that he has for Haskell and how UTXO model accounting works, and how Meld is going to approach a lot of their things in regards to how they're solving various solutions. So in terms of technical knowledge and experience, it's definitely there. Hai is also on various other projects, such as the Indigo protocol, who is building synthetic assets on Cardano. So that isn't easy to do. And to see Hai on various different projects, it's a good indicator that he is very good at what he does. So in terms of technical knowledge, I'll give that a 3 as well. Now, in terms of trading, this one's an interesting one to score. This was very interesting to score. Their token, their Meld token, is being distributed at the moment on their ISPOs. So that's the initial stake pool offerings that Meld has. They have, I think, 10 pools now offering a different range and mix of of Meld tokens, either 100% Meld tokens, they take 100% of your rewards and give you 100% of the Meld tokens in return at the buying point, or a 50-50 split. You get 50% ADA and 50% Meld. So you have a couple of options there with how that works. Now, their token isn't actually in your hands. You can't actually use it, spend it, trade it anywhere. But the fact that they have that token distribution going, they have a dashboard so you can keep track of how many potential tokens that you are actually getting as well. So I am going to give that a 2 at the moment. Now, there are no exchange listings, so I have to give that a 1. But the fact that they are distributing their tokens, I'll give that a 2 at the moment. Now, their Google Trends is way too hard to work out because they are blended in with Meld, the general term as well. So I couldn't search off their actual project name, and using deviations of that, such as Meld Crypto, Meld Cardano, didn't really work as well. It came up with no search trends for them. So in terms of Google Trends, I had to give it a 1 purely because I couldn't get the data for it. Eventually, if I can get the data for it, I will reevaluate that and give it a higher score if possible. Their Twitter mentions, very high. A lot of people are talking about the project. Either SPOs or stake pool operators are complaining that they're losing tokens and delegation to Meld, or people in general are really excited about it. So Twitter mentions are very high. Their Twitter following and their Reddit following is extremely high as well, so I'm giving that a score of 3. Their level of transparency is interesting. So the transparency for the core team itself, the core developers, we know who they are. We haven't spoken to any of them. A lot of them are in Vietnam itself, so there may be language barriers there. But in terms of Ken Ohling's transparency and being willing to talk on almost every single podcast, the level of transparency there, I'm going to give that a 3 because it is always easy enough to contact Ken and get him on an interview. And I may do that and get an update from him in terms of what's happening with the project. In terms of participation and being a part of the Cardano ecosystem, that's an interesting one as well. And I'm going to give that a 2, mainly because they are doing that ISPO, their initial stake pool offering, and they're definitely pulling in users from different parts of different blockchain ecosystems and bring them over to Cardano because of that attractive ISPO model, different way of raising funds and different way of distributing tokens. So I'm going to give that participation score of 2. Now, their experience in terms of delivering projects like this, looking at their developer profiles and the people that are working on the project in general and what they've done in the past, I am going to give that a 3 because they have delivered large projects and have worked in large companies before. Now, the only downside that I would consider giving that a lower grading is that I don't think any of the developers have delivered a crypto-related or blockchain-related project. So I may reevaluate that, but for now, it's a 3. So let's tally up all these numbers and work out exactly what the score is for this project. And punching in the numbers, we have a total score of 55 out of 63. So that's a pretty good score. All right, so let's move on to our very last project. So for our last project that we'll look at, it's Vive Finance. Now, these guys we have interviewed multiple times, and you can find the interviews on our podcast, on our YouTube channel as well. So let's have a look at the product evaluation itself. The product white paper is very detailed. There's a light paper and a white paper as well. So the white paper includes all of the complex diagrams, and the light paper gives you a quick overview of what the project's all about. So in terms of their detail, their information that they're providing in terms of the project in general, white paper gets a score of 3. Competition, I'm also going to give a 3 as well, because they're providing something quite complex and quite diverse. So they're not just doing the decentralized exchange, they're doing their auto harvester and also integrating the hedge fund aspects behind it as well. So this gives people of different levels of education and different levels of ability in the crypto space to find their way in. So if you're very experienced and you know how to use a DEX, you can use their DEX. If you're not and you just want to get into it, or you're just a beginner in the crypto space, you can use their auto harvester and their staking at the bar, so you can stake and get rewards and earn that way. Or you can be a complete novice and use their hedge fund instead and have an app that will do it all for you. So there's different levels of education there. So in terms of the value that they're bringing and competition, so in terms of the competition first, they don't have any competition at all that is doing anything like this. So competition is a 3. In terms of the value that they're bringing a lot of value there. And they also have an education layer as well. So again, I'll give that a 3. In terms of roadmap and what they're delivering, what they're doing, they did an ICO earlier on, and they are delivering on a couple of really cool little projects, especially their NFT staking at the moment. So in terms of roadmap, hitting their goals, doing what they need to do to get this project out there, I give that a 3 as well. Their community and online presence, this is okay, it's pretty good. They're very active on their Discord. So after they released their NFT staking, a lot of people jumped on board. Their Telegram group is quite active as well. And Facebook is pretty average, but Facebook page marketing at the moment is hard. You have to essentially pay Facebook to be seen on Facebook pages. So in terms of their social, it's right up there. In terms of communication and delivering information about the project, they're always online. They're always on Twitter, Discord, and Telegram. So if you're trying to communicate with them, trying to get in and do something, ask a question, they're there for you. Their advisors that they've got on their project. Now, Steve is lucky enough to be related to the project, the Propeller AI team. So that gives them a competitive advantage to be able to tap in their AI knowledge into their auto harvester and do some really cool things there. So in terms of advisors and having that experience there, I'm giving that a 3. In terms of their influencers, they have done a whole bunch of different interviews online with various different projects, various different influencers as well. So I'm giving that, at the moment, a 2. Now, in terms of traction and development, they haven't put out any code, just like any other project, but they do have a lot of partnerships. They do, not as many as Meld, but they do have quite a few partnerships that are out there. So I'm giving that a 2 at the moment. Now, in terms of code that is available, I'm giving that a 1, again, because no project really has put out any code. Their GitHub repos, in terms of what is visible, there's nothing available. Their developers that are on the project, their Imagine AI. I know they're very experienced Haskell developers, but I haven't been able to track down any of their GitHub repos. So I'm giving them that a 1 at the moment. In terms of development engagement, there isn't any code for the project either. So developer engagement is a 1. But technical knowledge and being able to possibly deliver and to work out the concurrency issues and so forth. I have spoken to Steve personally, and I completely understand where he's at with things. And in terms of the developers that are working on the project, they've come up with their own concurrency issue for scaling on Cardano. It's not really an issue, really, if you know how to work it. So it's technical knowledge. I'm giving them a 3. I'm quite confident they have the technical knowledge to deliver on the project. Now, in terms of trading, this one's an interesting one. Their token, they did an ICO, a very traditional ICO with KYC, the Know Your Customer process on there, and it was smooth. So I'm giving that a 2. Now, their exchange listing, they aren't listed on any exchanges yet, but they also did an NFT distribution. So all of the participants in the ICO received an NFT, a thank you NFT. Majority of them were purple, but there were a couple of very rare gold ones. And what they've done now is they've allowed you to receive staking rewards by staking an NFT. So you're not staking your ADA or staking your Wi-Fi tokens, you're staking this NFT for extra Wi-Fi tokens. So that's a pretty cool initiative. So, it's not exchange listing, it's not token itself, but they've put in that extra bit of utility around an NFT. So that's really cool. And they didn't have to do a paid NFT process for that. They were just distributed freely. So that is pretty cool. But no exchange listing, can't freely exchange it. But you can exchange and trade these NFTs on cnft.io. Do I give it a 2? Do I give it a 1? I don't know. Let me know in the show notes what you think. I may update it. But for now, I'm giving it a 1 because it's an exchange listing. And if comparing apples with apples, it needs to be an exchange listing. Their network effect, and if they're found on Google, and if people are searching for them on Google, they do and did have a bit of activity. So I'm giving that a 2 at the moment in terms of discoverability on Google. Their Twitter mentions have increased quite a bit lately because of their Vive staking token, and they're getting a lot more engagement on Twitter as well. So I'm giving that a 2. Their followers on Twitter and Reddit are quite low though. This isn't a project that has been promoted heavily from promos and hypes. It's gone the slow and steady way, and I really respect that as well. So I am giving that a 2 in terms of their Twitter and Reddit followers. Now, the level of transparency, the developers, I know who they are. I know the development team, and that has been revealed. And Jack and Steve are always online and always communicating. So we know who that is as well. We haven't spoken to any of their advisors or partners, but they're related to Steve. So it's okay. I'll let that one slide for now. Maybe I'll do an interview with Steve's dad in terms of Propeller AI. But that's okay. We don't need to at the moment. So I'm giving transparency a level 3. In terms of participation, I'm giving them a 2. They haven't released any tools or code for the Cardano ecosystem, but they are participating in NFTs on the Cardano blockchain and doing some awareness of things there. So I'm giving them a 2. In terms of experience of delivering the projects, because they're teamed up with Imagine AI, I'm giving them a 3. So they're working with a very experienced Haskell development team, and Steve has also delivered projects in the past, and so has Jack. So I'm giving that a 3 in terms of experience. So let's look at the numbers here and tally up the score for Vive and work out exactly where all of these projects rank. So we have a total score of 52 out of 63 for Vive Finance. So all of these scores are actually very close. So let's pull it up and have a look at each one of these totals and see how these 4 projects rank. Right, so I have all of the projects in front of me now and with all the scores. So ADEX Pro has a total score of 51. Cardax has a score of 50. Meld has a score of 55. And Vive Finance has a score of 52. So if I just rearrange these here, so Cardax is the lowest at 50, ADEX Pro is next at 51, Vive Finance 52, and Meld at 55 points. So our top leading project out of these 4 is Meld, followed by Vive Finance, ADEX Pro, and then Cardax at the end there. Now, this is all just my opinion. This isn't financial advice. I'm not telling you to go out there and invest in any of these companies. This is just purely a scoring and ranking mechanism to see which projects are out there and how they rank and compare to each other. Now that you know and understand this ranking process, go out there and find a project for yourself. Maybe have a look at some of these other projects that have been called out as potential scams, or look at one of these other projects that I've mentioned in my list here and see how that ranks based off your own calculations using the framework, this project evaluation framework. If you have an opinion for my framework or have any suggestions to add to it or different ways of ranking it, I'd love to hear your opinions as well. This could be a little community collaboration on improving this and helping the community to avoid scams or evaluate good projects to the bad projects. So I'd love to hear what you think in regards to the framework and how it can be improved. Now, if you enjoyed this podcast episode, please consider leaving us a 5-star rating and review on the Apple Podcast Network. It really helps with the discoverability of the podcast. But if you're not listening to it on an iOS device, you won't be able to do that. But what you can do is go to the cardano.com.au website, check out the share page, so /share, and you'll be able to tweet it out automatically. You just need to click on something there, give us a tweet, a retweet, or a share on LinkedIn or something else, whatever we have on that page, you'll be able to engage. Click it out on all the different social networks and help us out that way. So if you're not giving us that little ranking mechanism in the Apple Podcast Network, tweet it out and make it viral elsewhere. So we'd love to see that happen. And thank you again so much for listening to the podcast. It's always a pleasure to have you all here. Now, until next time, everyone, please keep your seed phrases safe and secure. Make sure you keep them backed up. Until next time, bye.
Yeah, gotta do it like that. You've been listening to the Learn Cardano podcast. Gotta get it hype. Crypto is what we like, but this is not investment or financial advice. Gotta do your research, cause it's risky. We know it is. This show is educational and it's informative. Crypto's the future, really, it ain't no debating. IOHK, Emergo, we're not affiliated, not Cardano Foundation. We just gotta say it. A show that you can learn and it's for your entertainment. Yeah, you gotta check it. Don't wanna be missing that. You were tuned in to the Learn Cardano podcast. Yeah, giving insight. Ain't another show like this when it come to crypto. Invest at your own risk. Might not be for everyone, but who it is for, we keep giving you some info and plenty more. Hey, yeah, the Learn Cardano podcast. Hey, yeah, the Learn Cardano podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Keep it locked right here. Let's go.